I survived emergency surgery only to return to a house that smelled of betrayal rather than antiseptic. After 5 days away, I expected peace, but found my living room destroyed. My only son stood there, smashing a hammer against my personal safe. He spun around, his eyes devoid of love. I realized the boy I raised for 30 years had vanished, replaced by a desperate stranger willing to crush his own mother for cash. My name is Marjorie Hale. I am 57 years old, a widow, and for 3 decades, I was the person Northbridge Capital Systems called when the numbers refused to balance. I spent my professional life predicting financial disasters and mitigating risks for people with more money than sense. I thought I had seen every variety of greed the human heart could manufacture. I was wrong. I had just spent 5 days in a sterile hospital room following emergency surgery that left me with a 6-inch incision across my abdomen and a profound sense of fragility. The doctors had been clear about my recovery. They told me I needed absolute rest. They told me to avoid stress. As the taxi idled outside my 2-story colonial in Hawthorne Ridge, I fantasized about my down comforter and the silence of an empty house. I paid the driver in cash and walked slowly up the driveway, clutching my side. The silence I found inside was not the peace I craved. It was the silence of a held breath. I unlocked the front door, and the air felt wrong. It was stale and thick. My hallway runner was kicked up at the corner. A vase of lilies I had bought before the ambulance came was shattered on the floor. The water dried into a stain on the hardwood. My instincts screamed at me to turn around and leave, but I moved forward. I needed to know. I pushed open the double doors to the living room. Travis was there, my son, my only child. The boy I had raised alone after his father passed. The boy whose tuition I had paid, whose debts I had quietly settled more times than I could count. He was on his knees in the corner of the room, near the antique writing desk. He was swinging a heavy framing hammer down with terrifying force against the floorboards where my concealed safe lay hidden under the rug. Travis, I managed to say. He spun around. The look on his face stopped my heart cold. It was not relief to see his mother alive. It was pure, unadulterated fury. His face was flushed a deep, unhealthy red, and his eyes were wide with a mixture of panic and violence. He looked like a stranger wearing my son's skin. He did not rush to help me. He did not ask about the surgery. He dropped the hammer and lunged at me. I stumbled back, my hand instinctively going to my fresh stitches, but he was too fast. He grabbed the strap of my purse and yanked it hard. The leather strap dug into my shoulder, sending a shockwave of pain through my healing body. The codes, he screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. "Give me the damn codes." "Mum, I know you have them written down in here." He tore the bag from my weak grasp and upended it. My pill bottles, my wallet, and my phone clattered onto the floor. He fell to his knees, scrabbling through the mess like a starving animal. "Travis, stop." I gasped, leaning against the doorframe to keep from collapsing. You're scaring me. What is this?" "Shut up," he roared, not even looking at me as he tore through my wallet slots. "I don't have time for your lectures. The bank blocked the transfer." Why did they block the transfer? I watched him, paralyzed by a horror that went deeper than the physical pain. This was not a sudden snap of judgment. You do not find a concealed floor safe by accident. You do not try to hack a bank transfer on a whim. He had known I would be in the hospital. He had counted on me being incapacitated. He had waited for the moment I was physically unable to fight back so he could strip me clean. He threw my driver's license across the room in frustration and looked up at me. There was no love in that gaze. There was only calculation. He looked at me and saw an obstacle to a payday. My breathing hitched. The mother in me wanted to curl up on the floor and weep for the death of the son I thought I knew. But Marjorie Hale, the woman who had survived cutthroat boardrooms and market crashes, straightened her spine. The pain in my abdomen was sharp, but my mind was suddenly crystal clear. This was not a family dispute. This was a robbery. And for the first time in 30 years, the thief was standing right in front of me. I realized then that I had to survive this not as his mother, but as his adversary. To understand the magnitude of this violation, you have to understand what was at stake. I am not a destitute pensioner scraping by on Social Security. Over a career spanning 30 years, through shrewd investments and the relentless compounding of interest, I had amassed a net worth hovering near $4 million. That money was my shield. It was supposed to be the guarantee that I would never be a burden to anyone, least of all my son. But Travis saw it differently. To him, my liquidity was not a shield. It was a solution. Travis had been unemployed for 11 months, a fact he blamed on the economy, bad bosses, and bad luck. The truth lay scattered on the floor amidst the wreckage of my living room, while he continued his frantic search through my scattered documents, breathing like a cornered animal. My eyes locked onto a crumpled piece of paper that had fallen from his pocket during his assault on my purse. It was a promissory note. It was not from a bank. The header was crude, and the terms were barbaric. It was signed by a man associated with the Cedarbrook Strip, a stretch of town known for windowless buildings and men who collected debts with tire irons. "Travis," I said, my voice trembling, not from fear anymore, but from a dawning, icy realization. "What have you done?" He ignored me, throwing a stack of my investment files into the air. "Where is the ledger? You always keep a physical ledger." I looked at the chaos around me. In the 5 days I had been lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, praying for recovery. My son had been busy. He had not been pacing the waiting room. He had been here. He had convinced himself that I was dying, or at least that I would be incapacitated long enough for him to liquidate my life. He had moved furniture. He had packed boxes, on the dining table. I saw a folder stamped with a realtor's logo. He was not just stealing my cash. He was preparing to sell my home. He had drafted a power of attorney, likely forging my signature while I was unconscious under anesthesia. "You thought I wasn't coming back," I whispered. The words tasted like bile. Travis stopped. He turned slowly, sweat dripping down his temple. "You were sick, Mum. Really sick. I had to make sure things were handled." "Handled?" I pointed to the safe he had been trying to smash open. "Is that how you handle your mother's legacy, by breaking it open with a hammer?" "I need $50,000 by tonight," he screamed, the mask of concern slipping entirely. "Just tell me the code. If I don't pay them, they're going to come here. They know where you live." The puzzle pieces snapped together with the precision of a corporate merger. The gambling debts, the secrecy, the sudden attentiveness before my surgery followed by silence during my recovery. He had leveraged my mortality. He had bet on my death to pay for his sins. He looked at me, seeing a frail woman in a post-surgical girdle, clutching her side in pain. He saw a victim. He saw an ATM that had malfunctioned. But he had forgotten who I was. I was not just Mom. I was Marjorie Hale. I had navigated the dot-com bubble and the housing crash. I had outmaneuvered aggressive takeovers and spotted forensic accounting irregularities that sent men to federal prison. I knew how to follow the money. And more importantly, I knew how to stop it. My heart was breaking, shattering into pieces that I knew would never fit back together. The boy I had walked to kindergarten was dead, replaced by this sweating, greedy junkie of a man. But as the heartbreak settled, something colder and harder took its place. I looked at the fear in his eyes, fear of the men at Cedarbrook, fear of being broke, fear of me. "I am not going to die, Travis," I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing all its warmth. "And I am certainly not going to let you sell my house to pay for your stupidity." He took a step toward me, his hands shaking. "You don't get it. I don't have a choice." "We always have a choice," I replied. I realized then that if I wanted to survive this, I could not just be his mother. I had to be the thing he feared most, a creditor who was calling in the loan. I had to live, and I had to win. The conversation ended the moment Travis shoved me. The force of his hands against my shoulders sent me stumbling backward until my spine collided with the hallway wall. A jagged bolt of pain tore through my abdomen, radiating from the surgical site like a flare. My knees buckled, and I slid down until I was crouching on the floor, gasping for air that refused to fill my lungs. The room spun in sickening circles, a reminder that the anesthesia had not fully left my system. "Stop stalling," Travis screamed, looming over me. "Unlock it. Unlock the damn banking app." He snatched my phone from the floor where it had fallen. I tried to lift my hand to stop him, but my limbs felt like they were moving through water. He tapped the screen frantically, but the device remained locked. He needed my face. He dropped to his knees in front of me, grabbing my jaw with a roughness that made my teeth rattle. He shoved the screen inches from my nose. "Look at it," he yelled, his spit flying onto my cheek. "Open your eyes wide and look at it." I squeezed my eyes shut, turning my head away. It was a small, pathetic rebellion, but it was all I had left. "You useless." He trailed off, hurling the phone onto the rug. He looked around wildly, his eyes landing on a white charging cable plugged into the wall outlet near the baseboard. He ripped it free, the plastic casing snapping. He began winding the cord around his hands, pulling it taut with a terrifying snap. "I didn't want to do this," he muttered, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper that was somehow worse than the shouting. "I really didn't. But you have to sit still. You have to listen." He reached for my wrists. He was going to tie me up. He was going to bind his own mother in her own home like a hostage. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the haze of my pain. My right hand scrambled blindly across the surface of the side table next to me. My fingers closed around the cold, heavy crystal of a decorative vase. As Travis lunged for my left arm, I swung the vase with every ounce of strength I had left. The heavy glass connected with his forearm with a sickening crunch. "Ah!" Travis shrieked, recoiling instantly. He clutched his arm, stumbling back toward the center of the room. The vase fell from my hand and shattered against the floorboards, sending shards of crystal skittering across the wood. He looked at me, his face twisted in shock and pain. You could have broken my arm. Stay back," I wheezed, using the wall to pull myself up, though my legs were trembling violently. "You don't understand," Travis roared, tears of rage and pain streaming down his face. "If I don't give them something tonight, they aren't just going to break my legs. Mom, they're coming here. The guys from Cedarbrook. They said they'd burn the house down with us inside. They said they'd cut us up. The room went deadly silent, save for his ragged breathing. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the terror vibrating in his pupils. I realized something profound in that moment. Travis was not hurting me because he hated me. He was hurting me because he was terrified of them. His violence was not born of malice. It was born of cowardice. He was a weak man squeezed between a rock and a hard place. And he had decided I was the softer target. That was his mistake. And that was my leverage. If he was driven by fear, I could use that. If I fought him physically, I would lose. I was 57 and freshly stitched up. But if I played into his fear, I could manipulate him. I forced my breathing to slow. I let my shoulders slump, feigning a total surrender I did not feel. "Okay," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Okay, Travis, stop. Just stop." He blinked, still clutching his bruised arm. "What?" I can't give you everything." I lied, my mind racing through liquidity calculations faster than it ever had at Northbridge Capital. "The bank. They have security holds on large transfers. You know that." "I need it all." "You'll get nothing if they lock the account for fraud," I said, injecting a tone of helpless maternal concern into my voice. "But I can do a small transfer. The daily limit? $2,000? Maybe $3,000? I saw the hesitation in his eyes. $3,000 was not 50, but it was cash. It was a lifeline. "Do it," he hissed. "Do it now. And then we figure out the rest." And he thought he had won. He thought I was broken, capitulating to save my skin. He did not know that I was just buying time. I handed him the phone, my hand shaking intentionally. As he unlocked it with my face, I knew one thing for certain: the war had just begun. And I had just secured my first tactical position. "I feel faint," I lied, leaning heavily against the doorframe. My hand fluttered to my forehead in a performance that would have embarrassed my younger self. But it was necessary. "The medication?" "I need to lie down. Travis, just for an hour. Then we can discuss the rest." Travis looked at the transfer confirmation on my phone, then at me. The $3,000 had bought me a temporary ceasefire. "Fine," he snapped, pointing down the hall toward my master bedroom. "Go. But don't think about locking the door. I'll be right outside. And if I hear you call the cops, I swear to God, Mom." "I know," I whispered, affecting a tremble I no longer felt. "I know." I shuffled into my bedroom and closed the door, leaving it unlocked as ordered. The moment the latch clicked, the frail invalid vanished. I moved with silent, efficient purpose. I went to the walk-in closet, pushing aside the heavy winter coats until I reached the back wall. Sewn into the lining of my old trench coat was a small, prepaid burner phone. I had kept it charged for years, a habit from my days investigating corporate fraud, when being untraceable was sometimes a job requirement. My fingers flew across the keypad. I did not call the police. They would take too long, and Travis would panic if he saw a cruiser. I called Loretta Quinn. Loretta answered on the second ring. She was a former fraud investigator who had pivoted to private security after the department grew too soft for her liking. "Marjorie." Her voice was sharp, alert. "You're supposed to be in recovery. Why are you calling from the emergency line?" "Travis is here," I said, keeping my voice to a barely audible whisper. He is holding me hostage in my own home. He owes money to a crew from the Cedarbrook Strip. There was a pause on the line, heavy and cold. Cedarbrook. Loretta exhaled a breath that sounded like a curse. Marjorie, listen to me very carefully. Those aren't loan sharks. They are butchers. If Travis owes them significant capital, they won't stop at breaking his legs. They will come for the house. They will come for you. I know, I said. That is why we are going to trap them. Trap them. Loretta sounded incredulous. You need extraction. I can have a team there in 20 minutes. No, I insisted. If you come in guns blazing, Travis might do something stupid, or the gang might scatter and come back later. I need to end this. Tonight. Permanently. Outside the door, Travis's voice rose in a frantic crescendo. He was on the phone with his handlers. I held my device up to the crack in the door, recording every word. I got $3,000. Travis was shouting, his voice cracking with hysteria. It's a down payment? No, don't come here. She's sick. She's weak. I can get the rest. I just need time to make her sign the power of attorney. Please, don't hurt me. I saved the recording. Evidence. Not just of the debt, but of his complicity. I knelt on the floor of the closet, ignoring the protest of my healing stitches, and pulled up a loose corner of the carpet behind the shoe rack. Beneath a false floorboard lay a small, fireproof lockbox. This was not the decoy safe in the living room that Travis had been battering. This was the vault where the real power lay. I keyed in the combination. The lock clicked open. Inside, the documents were untouched. The deed to the house. My passport. And most importantly, the incorporation papers for Trust Phoenix. Travis thought my wealth was sitting in a checking account waiting to be plucked. He did not know that 3 days before my surgery, sensing the fragility of my own life, I had initiated a transfer. The bulk of my liquid assets had been moved into this irrevocable trust. Legally, Marjorie Hale did not own $4 million. Trust Phoenix did. And Trust Phoenix had very specific bylaws regarding duress and fraud. I looked at the papers, a cold smile touching my lips. I wasn't just going to protect my money. I was going to use it as bait. Loretta, I said, bringing the phone back to my ear. I have a plan. I'm going to make Travis believe I have a hidden cache of liquid bonds. He will call the Cedarbrook men to come collect. When they get here, I need you to be ready. You are playing a dangerous game. Marjorie? Loretta warned, her tone grave. If they touch you. They won't, I said, my voice steady as steel. Travis is too greedy to let his golden goose get damaged before it lays the egg. Just promise me you'll have the police on standby for the signal. I'll be outside, Loretta vowed. But Marjorie, once you do this, there is no going back. He's your son. I looked at the door, listening to the man outside bargaining for my life in exchange for his safety. I have no son, I said. I have a trespasser. I hung up and hid the phone. I stood up, smoothed my nightgown, and prepared to walk back out there. I was done trembling. The victim had died on the operating table. The woman who returned was the one who had survived the crash of 2008, and she was ready to close the deal. The vibration of the burner phone against my palm felt like a warning shot. Loretta had sent a secure file, and as the document loaded on the small screen, the face of my enemy resolved into pixels. The man holding my son's leash was named Marlowe Finch. I read the dossier with the detached precision of a forensic accountant. Finch was not a common loan shark who broke thumbs for late payments. He was a predator who specialized in asset liquidation. His rap sheet was a horrifying catalogue of extortion and coercion, specifically targeting business owners and heirs who had temporary cash flow problems. He did not want the interest payments. He wanted the collateral. He wanted the deeds, the titles, and the inheritances. Travis had not just borrowed money from a thug. He had invited a vampire into our lives. I am looking at your property records right now. Marjorie, Loretta said, her voice tinny through the earpiece. You need to see what I just sent you. It was filed 2 days ago at the county clerk's office pending notarization. I opened the second attachment and felt the blood drain from my face. It was a quitclaim deed. It transferred the title of my home in Hawthorne Ridge to a holding company I did not recognize. At the bottom of the page, in unsteady black ink, was my signature. He forged it, I whispered, my thumb hovering over the image of my own stolen name. He practiced my signature while I was in the hospital. And that is not all, Loretta continued. I tapped into his sent folder. He emailed your bank manager yesterday attached to a scanned letter of authorization. He is trying to leverage the house to pay Finch. The betrayal was total. Travis had not just panicked. He had orchestrated a complete dismantling of my existence. He intended to leave me homeless and bankrupt at 57 to save his own skin. We need to kill the paper trail immediately, I said, my voice hardening. If Finch thinks that deed is valid, he will come here to claim possession. I have Douglas Merritt on the line, Loretta announced. He is the best asset protection attorney in the state. He owes me a favor. A new voice joined the call. It was deep, calm, and radiated authority. Mrs. Hale, I have already reviewed the files Loretta forwarded. This is a mess. But it is a mess we can contain. I am filing an emergency injunction right now. We are freezing every asset attached to your social security number. The house, the accounts, the portfolio. Nothing moves without a court order. Will that stop them? I asked. It will stop the money, Douglas replied. But it will also make them desperate. Mrs. Hale, listen to me closely. You need to buy us time to get the police in position. You cannot let Travis know that the legal walls are closing in. If he realizes the money is permanently gone, he might do something drastic. He is already drastic, I countered. You need to play the victim, Douglas instructed, his tone brooking no argument. Be weak. Be confused. Make him believe that the delay is just bureaucratic incompetence, not a counterattack. We need Finch to come to the house personally. We need to catch him in the act of extortion. I understood the play. It was a classic entrapment strategy. Make the target believe the prize is within reach, so they overextend themselves. So, I have to go back out there, I said, looking at the closed bedroom door, and let him think he has won. Exactly, Douglas said. We are turning the table. Finch is no longer the creditor. He is the mark. I hung up the phone and hid it back in the lining of the trench coat. I walked to the mirror and looked at my reflection. I messed up my hair, pulling a few strands loose to frame my face in disarray. I practiced a look of terrified exhaustion. Travis wanted a helpless old woman. I would give him the performance of a lifetime. I took a deep breath, clutching my stomach as if the pain were unbearable, and opened the door. The time for defense was over. I was hunting them now. I emerged from the bedroom with the slow, shuffling gait of a woman defeated by circumstance. Travis was pacing the hallway, his phone clutched in his hand like a weapon. He looked up at me, his eyes wild with a mixture of impatience and terror. He needed money, and he needed it before the sun came up. "Well," he barked, "did you do the transfer?" "I couldn't," I whispered, holding onto the wall for support. "The bank. They asked for voice verification. I was too shaky." Travis groaned and raked his fingers through his hair. "We are out of time. Mom, do you not get it? We are out of time." "There is something else," I said, pitching my voice low to force him to lean in. "There is a trust fund. It was set up years ago for emergencies. It is not in the banking system. It is independent." Travis froze. "How much?" $500,000. I lied. The number hung in the air. I saw the greed wash over his panic, smoothing out the lines of fear on his face. $500,000 was not just a lifeline. It was a fortune. It was enough to pay off Finch and still gamble for another year. "Where is it?" he demanded, stepping closer. "Where are the access codes?" "I don't have codes," I said. "It is a bearer bond account, the foundational documents, the physical keys to the trust. They are in the old leather valise, in the garage." The garage. He looked suspicious for a second. "I hid them there," I explained, my voice trembling perfectly. "I didn't want anyone to find them in the house. You have to help me down the steps, Travis. I can't walk that far alone." He grabbed my arm, not gently, and pulled me toward the door that led to the garage. He was practically vibrating with adrenaline. He opened the door and flipped the switch. The fluorescent lights flickered on, casting a harsh, clinical glow over the concrete floor. I knew exactly where to stand. Earlier, while Travis was distracted in the living room, Loretta had remotely activated the high-definition security camera mounted above the workbench. It had a direct line of sight to the center of the room. "Where?" Travis asked, scanning the shelves. I pointed to a dusty, brown leather suitcase sitting on the bottom rack of the tool shelving. "There. Bring it here." He lunged for it. He threw the suitcase onto the hood of my car, the metal groaning under the impact. His hands were shaking so badly he fumbled with the latches. "This is it," he muttered to himself. "This saves everything." He threw the lid open. The suitcase was empty. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Travis stared into the void of the suitcase, his brain unable to process the lack of salvation. Then, the snap occurred. "Where is it?" he screamed, spinning around to face me. "Where are the papers?" I thought they were there." I stammered, backing away until I was perfectly framed by the camera lens. "You liar!" Travis roared. He kicked the suitcase off the car, sending it skidding across the concrete. He advanced on me, his face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You are lying to me. You are trying to stall. Travis, please." I begged, raising my hands. "I am trying to help you." "Help me." He laughed, a manic, broken sound. "You are killing me. I already signed the deed over." "Mum, I forged your name on the title transfer. I sent the email to the bank. If I don't give Finch the cash tonight to buy back that paper, I go to jail for fraud. Do you hear me? I go to jail." I held my breath. There it was. The confession, clear, unprompted, and recorded in high definition. He had just admitted to forgery, title fraud, and identity theft. You sold my house?" I asked, pushing him just a little further. It's not your house anymore, he screamed, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. It's mine to sell. I did what I had to do. I was going to put you in a home anyway. I needed the money. Why won't you just die and let me have the money? The words echoed off the cold concrete walls. He had said the quiet part out loud. He didn't just want my wealth. He wanted my erasure. I saw the madness in his eyes, the total detachment from morality. He raised his hand as if to strike me, and for a second, I thought he might actually kill me right there. Travis. I gasped, letting my knees buckle so I slumped against the car door. I can't breathe. He stopped, his hand hovering in the air. He wasn't stopping out of mercy. He was stopping because a dead hostage could not give him a password. Get up, he hissed. Get up and find me money, or I swear I will burn this whole place down with you in it. I looked down at the floor, hiding the cold satisfaction in my eyes. He thought he was terrorizing a helpless old woman. He had no idea he had just read his own confession into the record of a criminal court. Loretta was watching. The trap was sprung. And now, it was time to close the jaws. The echo of Travis threatening to burn the house down had barely faded when the side door of the garage flew open with a violence that rattled the tool racks. The sudden intrusion sucked the oxygen right out of the room. 3 men stepped into the harsh fluorescent light. 2 of them were the size of industrial refrigerators, wearing ill-fitting leather jackets that did not quite conceal the bulges at their waistbands. But it was the 3rd man who made the air turn cold. He was average height, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that looked out of place among the oil stains and cardboard boxes. His eyes were dead, flat things that had seen suffering and found it boring. This was Marlowe Finch. Travis spun around, his aggression evaporating instantly. The monster who had been ready to strike his mother vanished, replaced by a trembling child. Marlowe Travis squeaked, his voice pitching up an octave. I didn't know you were coming here. I was handling it, I swear. You are handling nothing. Travis, Marlowe said. His voice was smooth, quiet, and terrifying. You are screaming loud enough for the neighbors to call the cops, and you are late. Marlowe stepped forward, his shoes clicking rhythmically on the concrete. Travis scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet until he was practically cowering behind me. The irony was sickening. He had just threatened to kill me, and now he was using my body as a shield against the wolf he had invited to our door. Mom, Travis whispered, clutching the back of my nightgown with sweaty hands. Mom, please, talk to him. Tell him we have the money. Don't let them hurt me. I did not move. I sat slumped against the tire of my sedan, keeping my posture hunched and frail. I needed to look harmless. I needed them to feel safe enough to brag. Above us, the red recording light of the security camera was a silent, unblinking eye. Marlowe stopped 3 feet from me. He looked down, sneering at my disheveled hair and the hospital band still on my wrist. Mrs. Hale, Marlowe said. Your son tells me you are a difficult woman. He says you are sitting on my money. I don't know who you are, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I am the man who owns this house, Marlowe replied, pulling a folded document from his inside pocket. Travis signed the deed over to me 3 days ago as collateral. But I don't want a house. Mrs. Hale? Real estate is slow. I want the cash value. Today, the deed is a forgery, I said, letting a spark of defiance show. He forged my name. Marlowe laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I know he forged it. I watched him practice your signature for an hour at the bar. I don't care about the legality of the paper. I care about the leverage. You pay me $200,000 right now. All my associates here will start removing parts of your son until the math adds up. I kept my face impassive, but inside, I was cheering. He had just admitted to knowledge of the forgery and intent to extort on tape. That was a felony with a mandatory minimum sentence. "If you kill us," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "you get nothing. My assets are locked in a trust. My death freezes everything for months of probate." Marlowe crouched down, bringing his face inches from mine. I could smell expensive cologne masking the scent of stale tobacco. "I don't need to kill you," he whispered. "I just need to make you wish you were dead. Old women have brittle bones. Marjorie, how long do you think you will last before you give me the codes?" He stood up and turned to Travis, grabbing my son by the throat and slamming him against the metal shelving unit. Tools clattered to the floor. "Where is it?" Marlowe roared, losing his cool. "Where is the cash? You said she had a stash in the garage. She does." Travis sobbed, tears streaming down his face. "She said it was in the suitcase, but it's empty. She's lying to me. She's hiding it. You lied to us." Marlowe turned back to me, his face twisting with rage. One of the large men stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. I glanced at the open garage door. Loretta would have heard the threats. The signal had been sent. The police were 3 minutes out. I just had to keep them talking. I just had to survive the next 180 seconds. "I didn't lie," I said, my voice steadying, shedding the act of the victim. "I just said the suitcase was where I kept the value. I never said the value was cash." Marlowe frowned, confused by the shift in my tone. "What are you talking about?" "The value," I said, looking from Travis to Marlowe, "is in the truth." Marlowe pulled a small black pistol from his waistband. Travis screamed. "Enough games," Marlowe yelled, pointing the gun at Travis's kneecap. "Last chance. Marjorie, open the account, or your boy walks with a cane for the rest of his miserable life." I looked at the gun. Then I looked at the camera lens, ensuring the weapon was in the frame. The evidence was perfect. We had extortion, assault, conspiracy, fraud, and now armed robbery. I took a deep breath. The tremble in my hands stopped completely. "Go ahead," I said, cold and sharp. The silence that followed was absolute. Travis looked at me with horror, realizing I was no longer playing the game he thought we were playing. Marlowe hesitated, his finger tightening on the trigger, confused by a victim who refused to bleed. And in that silence, I heard the distant, beautiful sound of sirens cutting through the night air. The wail of sirens outside grew louder, cutting through the garage walls, but Marlowe Finch was too consumed by his own rage to notice. He pressed the barrel of the gun against my son's kneecap. Travis was hyperventilating, his face a mask of snot and tears, begging for a salvation that I had already ensured would never come. "Transfer the funds." Marlowe screamed, his voice cracking with the intensity of his fury. "I want to see the confirmation screen right now. I need to authorize it," I said, my voice cutting through the noise with a sudden, jarring calmness. I held up my phone. "The bank requires verbal confirmation for high-value transactions. I have them on the line." Marlowe hesitated. He nodded sharply at the phone. "Put it on speaker?" "One wrong word. Marjorie. And your boy loses a leg." I tapped the speaker icon. The line connected instantly, not to a bank teller, but to the direct line of Douglas Merritt. "Hello." Douglas's voice filled the garage, crisp and professional. "Douglas," I said, locking eyes with Travis. "Please confirm the status of the Trust Phoenix assets for the current authorized party." There was a pause. Travis stopped crying. He looked at me, confusion warring with dread in his bloodshot eyes. He knew that name. He knew I had been working on a trust, but he thought he had intercepted it. "Mrs. Hale," Douglas replied, his voice projecting clearly. "As of 5 o'clock yesterday evening, all assets previously held under your personal accounts have been successfully migrated to the Trust Phoenix Irrevocable Holdings. The accounts are fully locked under legal protection. No withdrawals or transfers are permitted without a court order." The silence that followed was heavier than the humid air before a storm. Travis went pale. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The realization hit him like a physical blow. There was no money. There was no inheritance. There was no bailout. I had not just hidden the money, I had legally severed him from it forever. "You," Travis whispered, looking at me with absolute betrayal. "You cut me out. I'm your son. You cut me out. I protected myself." I answered coldly. Marlowe Finch let out a roar of pure animalistic frustration. He realized the game was rigged. He realized that the woman he thought was a helpless invalid had just checkmated him with a phone call. "You think you're smart?" Marlowe yelled, swinging the gun away from Travis and pointing it directly at my chest. "You think a lawyer saves you? Now I'll kill you both. I'll kill every." The garage door exploded inward. It was not a literal explosion, but the noise was deafening as the heavy metal tracks were breached by a battering ram. Flashbang grenades skittered across the concrete floor, detonating with blinding white light and a concussive thump that rattled my teeth. "Police, get down, get on the ground." The shouting was everywhere. Armored officers poured into the garage like a flood. The red laser sights of their rifles cut through the smoke, dancing across Marlowe's chest. Marlowe froze. For a split second, I saw him weigh his options. He looked at the gun in his hand, then at the wall of tactical gear facing him. Self-preservation won out. Won. He dropped the pistol and raised his hands, cursing violently as 3 officers tackled him to the oily concrete. Secure suspect, 1 secure. The 2 thugs were already on the ground, zip-tied and groaning, and then there was Travis. My son did not drop to his knees. He did not surrender with dignity. In a final act of pathetic cowardice, he scrambled to his feet and tried to run toward the side exit, shoving past a police officer in a blind panic. "No, no, I'm the victim," Travis shrieked. "She set me up. She's crazy." An officer grabbed him by the back of his shirt and slammed him against the hood of my car, the same car he had planned to sell. The sound of metal cuffs ratcheting shut around his wrists was the sweetest sound I had heard in years. "Travis Hale. You are under arrest," the officer recited. I stood up. I did not need the car for support anymore. I smoothed the front of my nightgown and took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that finally felt clean. The trembling in my hands was gone. The pain in my surgical incision was still there, a dull throb. But it felt distant, like a memory of a weaker woman. Travis twisted his head around as they marched him past me. His eyes were wide, pleading, searching my face for the mother who used to forgive him for everything. He was looking for the woman who would write a check to make the bad men go away. "Mum," he cried out, his voice breaking. "Mum, tell them. Tell them I was coerced." "Mum," I looked at him. I looked at the boy I had carried. The man I had raised, and the stranger who had tried to destroy me. I looked him right in the eye, and my expression did not waver. I did not cry. I did not reach out. I simply watched him disappear into the back of a police cruiser, my heart as still and cold as the ocean at midnight. The legal machine ground into motion with a terrifying efficiency that stood in stark contrast to the chaos of that night in the garage. The district attorney did not hesitate. Travis was indicted on multiple felony counts, including aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, extortion, and forgery in the first degree. The evidence I had gathered, the video confession, the forged deed, the recorded threats, was not just compelling, it was irrefutable. Marlowe Finch fared far worse because of his extensive criminal history and the presence of firearms. The federal prosecutors took an interest. He was facing charges under the RICO Act, a legal hammer that would likely keep him behind bars for the rest of his natural life. Throughout the preliminary hearings, Douglas Merritt stood beside me like a sentinel. He handled the press, the police, and the endless paperwork with a cool professionalism that kept me grounded. The Trust Phoenix assets are completely insulated, Douglas assured me one afternoon in his office, sliding a stack of documents across his mahogany desk. We have successfully argued that any attempt by Travis to access your funds was predicated on fraud. The courts have granted a permanent protective order. Your financial independence is absolute. Thank you, Douglas, I said, signing the final affidavit. And thank Loretta for me. I could not have done this without her. I met Loretta for coffee 2 days later. She looked at me, her sharp eyes searching for any lingering signs of the victim I had been. You don't owe me a thing, Marjorie, Loretta said, blowing on her steaming cup. I provided the tools. You are the one who stood in a garage with a sociopath and a gangster and didn't blink. You saved yourself. I had to, I replied. Returning to the house in Hawthorne Ridge was the hardest part. The broken glass had been swept up, and the police tape removed. But the air inside felt permanently tainted. Every room held a ghost. The kitchen where I had fed Travis as a baby. The living room where he had tried to rob me. The garage where he had begged a stranger to break my spirit. I realized I could not live there. The house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a museum of my betrayal. I called the real estate agent the next morning. Sell it, I instructed. I don't care about the market conditions. I don't care about the best time to list. I want it gone. The sale was finalized in 3 weeks. I took the proceeds and the funds from Trust Phoenix and did something I had promised myself I would do 20 years ago. I bought a 2-bedroom condominium in a quiet coastal town 2 hours south. It had large windows that looked out over the grey Atlantic. And more importantly, it had a security system that was state-of-the-art. The first letter from the county detention centre arrived a week after I moved in. The envelope was stark white, stamped with the ominous red ink of the corrections department. I sat on my balcony, the sea breeze tangling my hair, and stared at the handwriting I knew better than my own. Mom, the letter began, written in shaky cursive. I don't know what to say. I was sick. I wasn't myself. Please, you have to understand. I need money for the commissary. I miss you. I read it twice. In the past, those words would have broken me. I would have made excuses for him. I would have blamed the addiction, the bad friends, or the economy. I would have sent the money. But as I looked at the ocean, I felt a strange, hollow sensation in my chest where my guilt used to be. I realized that the mother who would burn herself to keep her son warm had died in that garage. She had been murdered by the son she tried to save. I did not rip the letter up. I did not burn it in a dramatic fit of emotion. I simply folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and dropped it into the recycling bin. I did not write back. There is a terrible freedom in realizing that you are not obligated to love someone who tries to destroy you, even if you share blood. I understood then that my survival depended on my ability to let go. The cord had been cut, not at birth, but at the moment he chose greed over my life. Goodbye, Travis, I whispered to the wind. I went back inside and locked the door. For the first time in 30 years, the lock was to keep the world out, not to keep a monster in. I was alone, but I was safe. And for the first time, that was enough. It was a crisp afternoon in late October when the phone finally rang with the news I had been waiting for. The leaves outside my new condo were turning brittle and brown, skittering across the balcony in the wind. I picked up the receiver and heard the voice of Douglas Merritt. He did not waste time with pleasantries. He knew I was not paying him for small talk. "It is done, Marjorie," he said. The judge accepted the recommendation. 18 years. 18 years. I sat there, holding the phone against my ear, listening to the faint static on the line. I waited for the grief to hit me. I waited for the crushing weight of maternal failure to collapse my lungs. But it never came. Instead, I felt a strange, buoyant lightness. It was not happiness, exactly. It was peace. It was the quiet satisfaction of a balance sheet that had finally been reconciled. "Thank you. Douglas?" I said softly. "Send me the bill for the closing arguments." I hung up the phone and walked to the vintage cedar chest I kept at the foot of my bed. My hands were steady. I opened the heavy lid. The smell of lavender and old paper rising to meet me. Inside lay a small wooden box, the repository of a life that no longer existed. It was filled with photographs, birthdays, graduations, Christmases where the smiles looked genuine and the eyes did not hold secrets. I sifted through them with the clinical detachment of an archivist. I pushed aside the photo of Travis at his high school prom. I ignored the one of him receiving his college diploma, a piece of paper I had paid $40,000 for. Finally, I found the one I was looking for. It was a Polaroid from a summer picnic, decades ago. Travis was 5 years old. He was wearing a striped shirt, his arms thrown tight around my neck, his face buried in my shoulder while he laughed at something his father had said. He looked safe. He looked like he loved me. I held the photo for a long moment. I let myself remember the smell of his baby shampoo and the weight of his small body against mine. I acknowledged the ghost of the boy he was, and then I acknowledged the monster he had chosen to become. I did not tear the photo. I did not burn it. I simply opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand, placed the picture face down in the back corner, and turned the key in the lock. The click of the mechanism was sharp and final. I was not just locking away a photograph. I was locking away the guilt. I was locking away the past. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon as I stepped out onto the balcony. The ocean air was cold, biting at my cheeks, but it felt invigorating. I pulled my cardigan tighter around myself and leaned against the railing. Below me, the Atlantic Ocean stretched out in an endless expanse of grey and blue, vast and indifferent. I had survived. I looked at my hands, resting on the cold metal railing. They were wrinkled, mapped with the veins of 57 years of life. But they were strong. People had looked at me. Travis, Marlowe Finch, Even the police at first, and they had seen a victim. They saw a widow. They saw prey. They were wrong. I did not survive because of luck. I did not survive because the police arrived on time. I survived because I was smarter than them. I survived because while they were playing checkers with violence, I was playing chess with assets and law. I survived because I refused to let sentimentality cut my throat. I went back inside and poured myself a cup of hot tea. I returned to the balcony, holding the warm ceramic mug against my chest, watching the whitecaps form on the water. The horizon was wide open. The future was unwritten, and for the first time in a long time, it belonged entirely to me. No one has the right to break my life, I whispered to the crashing waves. Not even the person I gave birth to. I took a sip of tea, the warmth spreading through me. I was alone. Yes, but I was whole. The world had tried to strip me down to my bones, but they had forgotten to check what my bones were made of. They thought I was glass, waiting to be shattered. They learned too late that weakness is just a coat we wear. Beneath it, if you push us hard enough, you will find a heart of steel that refuses to break. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear your thoughts. So please drop a comment below and let me know where you are listening from today and what you would have done in my shoes. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and smash the hype button so we can share this journey with even more people. Stay strong, everyone.